Greetings, and welcome to another Critical Review video, a series on my channel where I take a look at a game and I review it as objectively as possible and let you guys know whether or not it is worth picking it up at its highest price tag, usually on release. In this case, we are looking at For Honor, specifically its multiplayer, as I feel its single player is mainly a glorified, flashy tutorial to teach you how to play better in multiplayer, which is the meat and bones of this entire game. But that's not necessarily a bad thing. When you look at other multiplayer-centric games like Overwatch, it's doing just fine. So let's start at the beginning of what For Honor's multiplayer is all about. First of all, you pick one of the three factions, the Knights, the Vikings, or the Samurai. My personal choice was the Samurai. I loved the Orochi during the beta. That said, you choose one of the factions and you stick with it. Anything that you do in the multiplayer will help boost that faction's ability to attack or defend different zones on this world map, which acts as sort of its own metagame that is not only ongoing and persistent and rewards you over short and long-term aspects, but also is cross-platform between all of the platforms, although I do believe the gameplay is not. So what this overworld persistent faction-based warfare actually does is reward you over both short and long term depending on both your participation as well as whether or not your faction ultimately won, depending on the amount of territories that they were able to take over and defend. If you do win, or if you do well, you get rewards, which usually end up as random loot packages that give you pieces of gear that raise and lower your stats depending on your particular preference, as well as cosmetic items to help you stand out amongst all of the other warriors. This faction-based metagame is a fun novelty distraction from the overall potentially repetitive gameplay. Now for me, I didn't find it nearly as repetitive, as I get really deep into playing each individual character and wanting to master them, and when I do that, it takes me 10-15 hours plus just to get to where I feel confident that I can do well with one character, and then I start experimenting with others, and given that there are just so many characters to work with here, I could see myself playing for hundreds of hours regardless of doing the same things over and over and over again to enemy people and AI. Another aspect of the game that kept me going, even though the gameplay itself was somewhat repetitive, was the highly varied customization and very strong sense of self that you got from making this character, this hero, this warrior, your own person, making it you. And I found myself being that character. I found myself identifying as the Orochi samurai warrior that I played for my majority of time spent in the game. And on top of the visual customization, you have customization in the form of skill usage. Each character has 12 different skills that they can use in total across 4 different tiers. Each tier is unlocked as you acquire experience in the modes like Brawl, Elimination, and Dominion. As you spend more and more time with one warrior and level them up to level 10, level 20, and so on and so forth, you will unlock more of these skills to use until you have 12 in total, which will give you more opportunities to do a variety of different things on the battlefield. Some skills are actives, as in like stunning enemies around you, or calling in a ballista attack, or archers to attack a nearby area, or even healing your nearby allies or raising their damage. Cool stuff like that. But all of these skills are different. Some are passive too, where they can affect, say, if you're out of stamina, you can still sprint to full speed. So in terms of both visual customization and customization of your own personal playstyle within each character, For Honor does a really good job there. Next up, let's talk graphics and performance. On consoles, the game runs at 30 frames per second, with the PlayStation 4 running it at 1080p, and the Xbox One having a varied resolution that isn't always 1080p depending on what's actually happening in the game, but for the most part it will also hit 1080p and run at 30 FPS just like the PlayStation 4. The PlayStation 4 Pro bumps up the resolution as well as some of the other settings, I believe, but still doesn't hit 60 frames per second. However, on PC, if you have a reasonable rig, mid to high end, you will have no problem running the game at 60 frames per second and beyond. And as far as how the game actually looks, it's a good looking game. By far, the best aspects of the game visually are the characters and warriors themselves, impeccably detailed, with very convincing, powerful, and heavy animations to accompany the combat, which does help the gameplay in and of itself. Past that, the environments are well lit, very detailed, they feel lived in, they feel appropriate to the time, and are very convincing, especially when the lighting hits just the right angle and you just get a face full of God rays, and it looks very spectacular in that way. It's not the best looking game by far, and a lot of the environments are a little static, including things like trees and bushes, just not moving enough to really convince me, especially during a storm or raining or whatever. But they do a great job on the weather effects, including the rain and everything like that. Alright, now time to talk about gameplay. The best way to put it, in my opinion, would be rock, paper, scissors. At least that's kind of what it's like, because there are 3 different directions that you can aim attacks and that you can defend. Left, right, and above. At all times, when you are in the 1v1 lock-on mode with another enemy, you can tell where they are aiming and where they are defending at all times, and where they will attack via the on-screen notifications of usually the flashing red arrows. And if you block in time in that same direction, then you will deflect their attack and open up an opportunity to counterattack, and then they can defend that as well. There's a lot more depth to the combat than just describing it as rock, paper, scissors, though, because you have light and heavy attacks. Heavy attacks repel them a little further for a little bit longer time if they are able to block it, but they do a lot more damage. However, the windup does take a lot longer, so if you see the enemy winding up for a heavy attack and you use a light attack, then you will likely hit them instead and do some damage. But on top of that, there are also a variety of combos and different moves for every single character. This is where mastering each character can take a long time and be very rewarding once you are able to do so. For example, when playing one of the assassin classes, particularly the Orochi in the samurai faction, this guy can dodge towards attacks and at the right time deflect the attack and take no damage, and open the enemy up to 2 different types of counterattacks. One is quick, unavoidable, and undodgeable. The other takes a little bit longer, can be dodged, can be blocked, but ultimately does a lot more damage. And then there are other combos and aspects of depth in combat as well. So when you're playing Orochi and you are attacking from above, if you manage to land the first attack successfully, it opens you up to a second undodgeable attack very quickly in succession, and that's just a special perk to that particular character. Another special move of his is to dodge backwards and then rush forward with a special camera angle using a heavy attack. And this is really great for getting to the enemy's side and attacking from a direction that might be a little too fast for them if they don't see it coming. A huge variety of these types of moves are abundant on every single character and are unique to each character for the most part. There are some other assassin classes that can do that deflecting style of gameplay where you dodge towards an attack and deflect it and counterattack as opposed to just regular blocking. But that's ultimately uncommon. In my eyes, it's easier to make comparisons with For Honor's characters and warriors, who are all very varied, to, say, other characters from the likes of hero shooters and MOBAs, where each hero or god or character or champion all has different skills and different stats and different animations and everything, and it's kind of like that, but taken to an even farther extreme. And in some way even reminds me of conventional fighting games where they have combo lists like R1, R1, and then R2, or dash into light R1, stuff like that. And while I do praise the 1v1 gameplay and overall enjoy it, the game tends to break down once more than 2 people are involved in any given situation, and there are a variety of reasons for this as well. One reason is that when hitting a teammate on accident or purposeful or otherwise, it not only damages them slightly, but also causes them to flinch, which means if you are trying to help a teammate out by attacking his opponent, and you accidentally hit him, it will interrupt his attack, which ultimately may allow the enemy to get away, and that is another thing. It's very easy to dodge, roll away, and then just run. And I don't care who you are, you'll likely end up doing this if you are in any 2v1 situation. I mean, I have done it, I've seen people done it, and yeah, I still get mad when they do it because it completely takes away from the strength of the game, which is those 1v1 duels. And that's why I love duel mode, the 1v1 duel mode, so much more than really any other mode, is because it's just that finely tuned balance that makes this game feel great. But if you add any more people to that, or add other situations where there's a bunch of AI and your teammates can hit you, it becomes a pain. And while doing all sorts of attacks and dodges does take stamina, actually sprinting doesn't seem to. And I think this is one of the biggest flaws that allows the whole wild goose chase gameplay to happen, when you or an enemy will decide to just run away instead of fight, even if the odds aren't favorable. And I personally feel a good way to fix that would be to make it so that if you are sprinting, it drains stamina over time. And, depending on how hurt you are, will cause more stamina to drain over the same amount of time. That way, it's easier to catch up to people who just want to do nothing but run away. Even if it's a 1v1 fight, and you get them to low health and they just want to run, well, now you can catch them a little easier instead of trekking all over the map just to secure one kill. And on the topic of getting in the way of teammates and making them flinch and hurting them, I feel like they should do away with that entirely, with the whole being able to hit your teammate and do damage. Or at the very least, get rid of the flinch. Maybe keep the damage, but don't flinch them out of their own attacks, because that's just entirely detrimental to any sort of mode that encourages group play. I find that there is another little issue as well, and it is called revenge mode, a little meter that fills up after you take damage or block damage. And you can kind of spec into filling up this meter more through different upgrades to your weapons, gear, and armor. And people I have seen have been able to cheese this by building up so much revenge gain on both damage and blocking that when they are being fought 2v1, they have revenge mode going off constantly. And what it does is it gives you a bunch of extra armor so you can take more attacks, as well as overhauling your other offensive and defensive capabilities so that you can fairly easily ward off two people at once. And I saw this happen one time where two people were fighting this one guy and he had revenge mode going off almost constantly. He was unkillable. Maybe it was due to their lack of skill, but he just had it going off again and again. And when you unleash revenge mode, it knocks everybody back, and certain special attacks will knock people on the ground. And he was killing them. And in the end, only I was left, and I had to wait for his revenge mode to go away, and it still took me 30 seconds to down him due to his defensive playstyle. It was just kind of nuts. So I feel like they should tone that down a little bit. Another even bigger issue, though, is the fact that the game doesn't use any dedicated servers and uses nothing but peer-to-peer networking, which means there can be a host advantage. And in a game like this, where timing and accuracy is as important as it is, that is not a good thing. And you know how the game costs $60 and also has a $30 or $40 season pass? Well, on top of that, there are microtransactions. Now, there is this currency that you can get by playing and doing the daily quests and doing all of that stuff, and it doesn't take too long to acquire it. But you can get a lot more by spending that dough, yo. And this is bad, because you can then go and use that currency to buy more loot for your character. You know, more armor pieces, hilts for your weapon, blades, that kind of stuff. But that you're effectively in that way buying power. Now, the power you are buying isn't honestly all that powerful, but it does allow you to specialize in one or more ways, where somebody who doesn't spend money on this kind of stuff, it would take longer to effectively specialize in these particular areas of character design and gameplay. So if I wanted to specialize one of my characters, one of my warriors, with nothing but the ability to gain lots and lots of revenge mode really quickly, if I spent a bunch of money, odds are I would be able to a great deal quicker. Now, granted, everything is RNG, so you're just pumping money into RNG, and that kind of sucks. I would ultimately advise against doing that. It just wouldn't be competitive, and it's not very fair to everybody else. Plus, you know, part of the allure of playing the game is to get the loot yourself and not just buy it, because it then has the Diablo 3 effect, where people were cheating their characters in Diablo 3 by, you know, just giving themselves the most powerful gear, whatever. And when they did that, they found that any gear that they got past that just wasn't nearly as enticing. It wasn't any fun, because they already had the best. And, well, to a lesser extent, you still wouldn't want that happening here, right? Ultimately, though, it's pretty shitty to have microtransactions on that level that tie into getting RNG-related loot on a game that already costs $60 and is advertising a season pass and a deluxe edition and a gold edition and all this bullshit. It's scummy as fuck, and I don't think it's the developers doing it. I think it's Ubisoft. You know, they're just kind of going down the Activision path, at least as far as I know. On the plus side, there are particular modes that don't take gear score or loot into account on your character, so everybody's just kind of plain. So that is quite nice, and that is kind of a saving grace, but still, it's pretty scummy to have that in the game when you're already spending so much money. But past all that, I really do enjoy For Honor. It has a lot of potential, and I would love to see it last longer than just a few months. But the gameplay could technically get pretty repetitive over a long period of time, and that may already hinder a lot of people from picking it up entirely. And for me personally, I'm going to wait until the end of the month, read all the reviews that I can, and then make a decision then, and that's ultimately what I would recommend for anybody who is thinking about purchasing this game, because it is mainly multiplayer, and it's going to be worth about as much time as the community is willing to put into it. And if they're not going to put in the time, then, well, neither will I. So tell me what you think personally in the comments down below. Are you going to be buying this game? Do you already own it? Are you having fun with it? Do you not want to buy it? Let me know your reasoning in the comments. We'll have a discussion about all of that. Make sure you slap that like button for me. Would greatly appreciate it, and it really helps the video and my channel. If you like content like this where I review games on my channel, then make sure you hit that subscribe button. I also talk about other games like Paragon, and there will be even more games in the future that I will be talking about. Thank you very much for watching. I greatly appreciate your viewership, and I will catch you next time.